Have you ever caught yourself staring at two good options and thinking, how do I know what the right thing to do is? Well, if you're a goal-oriented and high-achieving woman who now in motherhood is overwhelmed by the high-stakes decisions you have to make on an almost daily basis, this episode is for you. Hello to all of you wonderful moms out there. This is episode 107 of Achieve Your Ambitious Mom Life. I'm your host, Anoki Kapasi. Today, I'm talking with Leah Goldman, founder of the Intuition Strategist, who teaches ambitious leaders how to trust their gut and use invisible data to make confident, aligned decisions. We're going to explore how strategically using your intuition and the tools that she's also created can help you move out of analysis paralysis to leading your life and family with more clarity and ease. Leah shows us how to treat your intuition like an internal algorithm, not a fluffy extra that's just hanging around. And also how to tell the difference between your gut truly knowing something versus fear, bias, or wishful thinking. We walk through her 4-part view framework so that instead of gathering all the data, you can focus on gathering the right data. And we talk about moving from overthinking into taking aligned action that support both your ambitions and your family. So if you're tired of second guessing every decision and you're ready to feel like a leader again in your work and at home, then make sure to keep listening. Are you looking for a way to blend success and motherhood without losing sight of who you are? I get it. I've been there too. Hi, I'm Anoki, a PhD researcher, business owner, and homeschooling mom of 2 boys. As your life coach, I help moms like you create a life you love at home and at work. If you're ready to stop feeling overwhelmed, overscheduled, and overlooked, and want a clear roadmap to a balanced life, a meaningful career, and finally feeling like yourself again while being the awesome mama that you are, you're in the right place. In this journey to create the life you truly desire, it's time to rediscover your dreams and achieve your ambitious mom life. Hey, amazing moms. If you're loving these actionable tips and real talk about balancing work and family life, make it super easy to never miss an episode by tapping that follow button right now. When you follow the show, new episodes will automatically show up in your feed. No searching required. You'll get first access to new episodes. It just takes 2 seconds, but it helps you stay on top of building that life that you want while being the incredible mom that you already are. So I am thrilled to introduce today's special guest who is helping ambitious leaders trust their intuition and take decisive action. Leah Goldman is the founder of the Intuition Strategist, an advisory firm helping ambitious leaders and organizations integrate intuition and strategy to achieve aligned success. A globally recognized authority in integrating invisible data, unspoken signals that algorithms can't measure, like experience, conflict, trust, and interpersonal dynamics, into leadership and strategy. Leah helps visionary executives use innovative tools like corporate tarot cards to turn their human AI, that's actionable intuition, into a competitive advantage. Her work reframes intuition as the most powerful form of intelligence for navigating a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Leah Goldman is also the host of the Intuition Strategist podcast, a show that helps leaders make confident decisions even when there's no playbook. Well, welcome, Leah.
Thank you, Anoki. It's so great to be here. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I think it was a mutual friend that connected us. And I was thinking about it because at first blush, it's not really obvious that we have a ton of overlap. I know that you are going to talk all about what you do, but I did want to take a moment before we started to make a direct comparison because I want there to be this societal shift in how people view moms. I view them as leaders. Like moms show up in so many different facets of their life as leaders, but we don't really recognize them as leaders. We as moms even don't often see ourselves as leaders. So I think that the moms that I work with are really looking to expand their sphere of positive influence. And so I think your strategies are going to be really applicable to my listener and the high achieving mom, both, in their work as in their careers and professionally, but also as leaders in their home. So Absolutely. I'm really excited to hear from you.
Thank you so much. And I was just taking some notes as you were speaking because you've hit on several really key elements of intuition strategy just in making that comparison between
Oh.
how our work is similar and different. And I am so grateful for our mutual friend to introduce us, because I love when people can pick up on those patterns without having to spell out, here's exactly why our work is complementary and aligned. And that's really powerful to have people who are understanding it and able to make those connections. So as you spoke about moms being leaders, you have absolutely hit on one of my core principles, which is that leadership comes in many different forms. And in fact, I have, as we talk and as your audience gets to know me a little bit better, you'll hear me talk about frameworks a lot, because that's really how I think. And I think that's probably one of our other commonalities as well.
For sure.
And so I have a framework that I call the leadership archetypes, which really explains how leadership is not a one size fits all. And we have some biases and assumptions about how our society talks about and personifies leadership, when in fact, leadership is about, where is your power coming from? Is it given to you, or do you intrinsically assume it and act on it? And how formalized is your authority? And so when we talk about leadership and we think about, yes, of course, there are the formal leaders who might be an executive who have been appointed in their role and have very overt and clear authority. And there are also leaders within our communities who are making change, who are leading groups of people to do things that are different. And that is also leadership. So I define leadership as anytime somebody makes a decision that other people can act on and follow. That is leadership. And so moms are leaders every day, because as a mom myself, I know how many decisions I am making constantly and how important it is for other people to follow those decisions and act on it to actually make the result that I want to have, whether it's my child, is it my daughter following my lead to do, her work or a new idea or a project, or is it my husband to help us get our family from point A to point B? And is it, my parents as, the eldest daughter, I'm making decisions all the time. Is it, the school community? Is it in my business? Is it with my team? And so there are so many hats we wear, and leadership shows up all the time. So I'm excited to continue this conversation. And, if anybody who's listening does not see themselves as a leader, I challenge that. And I think that leadership is something that we all practice, although it shows up in different ways in different scenarios.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have a lot of episodes where I really try to talk about exactly what you just said, that all these different roles that we show up as or take on, the different hats that we take on, that there is a level of decision making that requires you to be a leader, to have that CEO mindset, or also just being the role model. Especially, I often emphasize the mother-child sort of partnership that we have, because when we give ourselves permission to do certain things, or we make certain choices, take action in certain ways, we are essentially crafting and giving our kids permission to do those things too. So, and I think as women leaders, that's really, really important for our kids, whether we have boys or girls, sons or daughters, for them to see us women doing certain things, I think that's really important. So anyway, let's get to the more juicy questions here. Let's just start with you telling us, what exactly is an intuition strategist? I know you explained a little bit about that already. Like, what is it that you do? And because I've already talked to you before, I know that your story of what led you to your business is super fascinating. So I kind of just wanted to start there, the story and what an intuition strategist is.
Absolutely. So I will start by defining what intuition strategy is. And so that is my practice. I call it a practice intentionally because it's my business, and it's also something that I'm constantly learning, and I'm a highly curious person. So the practice evolves, but really intuition strategy is an operating system. It's a way for leaders to, and I already defined that leaders are anybody who makes a decision that others can follow. So for leaders to be able to trust their gut, make decisions, and get results. And that's really the headline. And I can break that down even more by explaining that trusting your gut is having the ability to hear what your intuition is telling you, to interpret it and understand what it means, and then be able to trust that you can take action on it so that you can make more confident decisions. You can make them faster because you already know what is aligned and misaligned, and you're using intuition and what I call invisible data,
Mhm.
complementing analytical data,
Mhm.
scientific data, and information to make really robust decisions that use all the information you have at the time to make a decision that you're confident in and you have conviction in to then act on and take action to get the results that you want. Because
Mhm.
without acting, your intuition is a
Mhm.
daydream or a fantasy, and it's the action that makes it real. And so the work that I do in the operating system is really around being able to articulate, where do I want to go? What is my
Mhm.
intuition telling me? And then using strategy, tools, and techniques that I've learned throughout my career to operationalize that, to execute on that strategy and get the value, the results, the return on your investment of time and money and energy,
Mhm.
make that all real.
Oh no, it's so interesting because most of what I do is focused on the more analytical part, the more rational decision making part, because often you get so overwhelmed. And so I kind of take the clutter of the data and kind of simplify it, and which I find is one of my superpowers. So it's really, really cool. I thought intuition, well, that's just a simple one question you ask yourself, and then what's your gut reaction? And I'm done. Intuition is like I've tapped into as much of my intuition as possible. But you're
Mm.
telling me that it's so much deeper than that, and it is almost the foundation of all the action you're going to take later. So that is a real like sort of reframe for me just in and of itself.
Yeah. And it's not uncommon to use that gut check. And in fact, that's the name of my newsletter. So it's my
Oh,
weekly
okay.
gut check. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that gut check, yeah, that's a great, really quick way to check in with intuition. However, sometimes that quick gut check, that fast thinking can also bring up not just intuition, but other instincts that may be different than intuition. So, sometimes that could be fear or other emotions or biases. And so
Hmm.
the work
Hmm.
I do is to really understand, what is intuition telling you? What is that inner trusted advisor that you can listen to and know that you can confidently move ahead, even though this is something that you've never done before, or has never been thought about or explored in the way that you might be feeling? That might be very different than fear or a reactive impulse. And so
Hmm.
that's the deep intuition work, is to really parse that out. And I love your approach because I too value analytical data. And you asked before about how I got here, and my path is a very analytical one, right? I'm actually an engineer by training. So I went to school, went to University of Florida, and I studied industrial and systems engineering, where I really was trained to look at all of this data, understand the individual components of systems and how do they fit together, what's the role, how do they interact. And that is very analytical to make
Hmm.
these complex
Hmm.
systems operate efficiently and effectively, which is really what an industrial engineer does. And I did that work for a long time in practice. While I wasn't on a manufacturing shop floor, as I had done in my internship, I took that skill set and I went into strategy consulting, and I worked with Fortune 100 companies across different industries, really looking to optimize their operations and use
Hmm.
analytical tools and frameworks and strategies to run playbooks to continue to make them leaner and more effective. I did that in-house at a tech company, and I led strategy teams for customer experience and for services and support organizations. And all of that relies very heavily on data. And yet, I was also seeing how decisions get made in a boardroom, in a C-suite, in a team on the ground,
Hmm.
with managers. And I've always been very curious about, well, how do people make decisions? And is it really only the data? Is it the spreadsheet in isolation? Or are there other ingredients that are helping us to really make good decisions that teams can execute, that a culture will accept and use to transform a business? And it turns out there's more than just what's on the spreadsheet. And
Hmm.
I left my role in tech because I saw many decisions happening that I actually was not aligned with. And I thought, maybe now's my time to leave. And as I left and I took a summer vacation with my family for the first time in years, and I really was able to relax and think about, well, what is it that I want to do? What am I curious about? What kind of books do I want to read? And I was picking up leadership books. I was, thinking about different career paths that I might explore next and networking and reconnecting with all different friends and colleagues from my past. And I was also doing things that were just really fun for me. And one of those things was reading tarot cards. So for fun, I loved learning how to use cards to make decisions, to think about the future, to consider what might be happening next. And so I, on my summer vacation, set up a little tarot reading blanket, a towel on a boardwalk in my most favorite beach town. And every night at sunset, everyone would come down and have a glass of wine or ice cream and, see what the kids were selling on their own blankets. And I had my blanket set up, and I got lines of people who were curious about what they might do next. They would ask me questions about, the typical kids would come and ask me, I'm going to a new school next year. How am I going to make friends? Or, a mom would come with her daughter and say, oh, we have this challenge in our family, or someone asks about their spouse or their partner. And people were asking me about, should I take this promotion that was offered to me? How do I have this conversation with my boss? What do I do about this business opportunity? And I thought, this is fascinating. People make decisions in so many different ways. Why is this a tool that is helpful for them? And I realized it's because the cards allow you to tell a story that somebody can react to. And that reaction is very telling about what is true for them. What is their intuition saying this story is about, right? I can pull a card and tell you, a point of view. I don't know you. I don't know the situation. And then the person who asks a question can say, actually, that card represents my boss, and this is actually the person on a different team, and maybe I need to talk to them. And they put those connections together. Their pattern recognition is sensing what is true, and they can come up with a next step that's really aligned for themselves. And so while I was there over the summer, I did this, we were there for a month. So I was doing this every week. I made a lot of ice cream money. So, ice cream cones on me. But also I was able to check in with people who had come. And I'd say, how did that decision go? What did you decide was the next thing? Did you take the promotion? Are you having? And then I would hear what they did and how they felt really aligned and positive and optimistic about the next step because they made that decision from a place of truth.
That's great. It was a great form of market research.
It really was. I encourage everybody to just go and try a thing and see what comes up for you.
Yeah. And so I think that whole story is so fascinating, and how you were able to convert that eventually into a business, obviously not specifically just tarot cards, but you have a corporate version of that. And I'm sure you'll be able to talk about that in a sec. But I wanted to ask you, because I've been curious about this. I see you show up on LinkedIn all the time. And through Intuition Strategy, do you work specifically with individuals who are leaders, or do you show up at places with the entire team and help the team lead whatever project they're trying to do? Like, or maybe there's some other version that I didn't cover there.
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you. You see a few different things on LinkedIn because I do both. I work with individuals one-on-one in a program that I call From Gut to Goal, where we use intuition to figure out where do you want to be 18 months or 2 years from now? And then what are the actionable things that you will do over the next 90 days to get there? So that is using the Intuition Strategy operating system. And then, yes, I do also work with leadership teams. So I have a series of workshops and programs that I work with all kinds of leadership teams. But the common thread being that they know that there is some sort of change, pivot, transformation, alignment that is needed, and really allowing the collective intuition of a team to collectively shape a strategy or to personalize a strategy and make it resonant for an individual or a team. And so, so that's the work that I do as the intuition strategist in my practice. And it's fascinating. And I get to see all kinds of different problems, challenges, questions that come up across all kinds of industries and roles.
Yeah, yeah. Consulting is really fascinating in that way. And yeah, I love that there is so much variety and it's just so stimulating to work on different projects. And like you said, sort of be this little piece in the puzzle that comes in, addresses that little component and comes out and, things move on without you. It's just really interesting.
It really is. And this work is such it's really a synthesis of all the different jobs I've had and roles I've played
Hmm.
in my career. So I was a strategy consultant for 12 years. And I'm like, yeah, there are parts of that I really loved and I was super energized by. There were parts that I was not
Hmm.
so aligned with. And, that's why those 12 years ended. And yet I can take what I loved. And that is
Hmm.
exactly what you're saying, which is like
Yep.
coming in, really working with a team to make change, work with individual people to impact a bigger picture, and then help them carry that on, right?
Hmm.
And
Yes.
move on to the next interesting challenge.
You're very much describing life planning, which is what I talk about all the
Mm,
time on my podcast. But it really empowers people. I work specifically with moms, but it empowers you to customize your life, to design that life, all the things that you're aligned with, the things that are you, that make you kind of sort of drive you. You get to pick and choose those things and take that ideal version of your life and turn it into your real life. So what you just described, your journey, is life planning. And you can do it in an organic way. You can do it my way, which what I do more formally in my business is a very systematic approach. So it really shortcuts the time of going down different avenues that don't necessarily lead to what you want and just kind of streamlining the whole process. So I loved hearing your journey because you very much described the whole process of life
yeah,
planning.
that's amazing. And I
Mhm.
love that another commonality between us is that we've both experienced this type of exploration and discovery that we feel so energized by that has informed our work. And we can be guides for other people who may not have the time, space, capacity to do that exploration on their own or have so many questions when they get to a crossroads and a next step. Like, how do I take the next right action to
Mhm.
continue to go towards what I want? Because everybody is differently motivated. And so you and
Mhm.
I must have some similarities in our makeup. And, that's a gift. And for us to
Mhm.
be able to apply that into these other
Mhm.
situations that we can see, oh yeah, here's how you can get from A to C when you
Mhm.
can't see B.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And you said taking action is a really important part of it because none of it really will matter in the end unless you act on it. And whether they say it or not, often what I see with the women that I work with is they know something has to change. They know it's not aligned. They have certain wants. And what's really inside their head is, where do I begin? How
Yes,
do I start? And so
right.
that is often what I will ease that concern, that tension for them. You talk about leaning into your intuition and that allowing you to make more confident decisions, but then also taking action breeds more confidence as well. And it's this feed forward loop.
Absolutely. I always say that the action creates clarity because then once you've taken a step, well, what did I learn? Like, did that feel right? Was that
Hmm.
aligned? Or was there something that was in my way? Was I unable to do the thing that I wanted to do? Why? And so then you become more aware of what are the obstacles or where might you
Hmm.
need help or what is not a path for you because, hey, actually, I thought I wanted to take a course and learn how to do
Hmm.
this new thing. And turns
Hmm.
out I don't love being in that environment. And you wouldn't
Hmm.
know unless you tried, right? And
Yeah.
and I think that's the beauty of the work that we do is like helping people get clear on what's that next right step for them
Hmm.
and using that as more data.
Yeah. Well, so that's so interesting because one of the things that I emphasize is that after you take the action is to kind of reflect on it, like what pieces of data do you have that help you either lean further into that path or do you need to pivot, right? And I'm specifically like things that feel concrete, tangible, those are the things that we weigh out. However, I love that you're talking about bringing intuition into every step of the way instead of just combining it at the beginning. I love that you don't just drop it after you check in, you keep moving forward with it.
Yes. And actually, I have a framework and I have a
Mm,
workbook, which I'm going to
neat.
share the link with you, Anoki, that you can share it with your audience. My framework is called the VIEW framework, VIEW. And it's a decision making, it's really a data inventory. So I think
Mm,
this will really speak to you and your audience because each letter of VIEW stands for another piece of data that you can
hmm
collect to help to look at the decision you're making and feel confident that you have all of the data that
hmm
you might need to make the best decision you can at the time.
mm,
And so V stands for value and values, which are your personal values. If you're in an organization, what are the values of that
hmm
organization? And it's also value. What is the value that you are
mm,
delivering in your
hmm
role, in your whatever hat you're wearing at that
hmm
moment? I is insight. And that is where the intuition, the invisible data, what are you feeling and sensing, combines with other forms of insight, which are perspectives,
hmm
points of view from people who you trust, and data. So, actual
hmm
analytical data that you may have that can give you a very robust perspective, data, insight on the situation. E is empowerment. So that's around what's motivating you, driving you forward. That could be your intrinsic motivation or external motivators. But really what gives you that drive to keep going. And then W is wisdom, which could be your own lessons learned and what you've
hmm
reflected on or lessons that you've experienced in the past. And it's also the stories and the traditions and the things that you've learned from your mentors, could be from your family and your ancestors. So there's so much wisdom. What can you learn from that and apply to the situation? And so
hmm
it really gives you different lenses to look at a problem through and to take all of that, take some time to really lay that out and therefore have confidence that you're looking at this in ways that are resonant for you and personal for you and this specific decision so you can go and take action and move forward. And so intuition can be infused into action and decisions and reflection all throughout the process.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I do want to ask, a lot of moms, as I mentioned, feel overwhelmed just to begin with. And so there's a level of decision paralysis that comes. What do you think causes that decision paralysis? Especially for, in my case, in the world that I interact with, they're already very highly skilled, have had a lot of foundation in professional training, these moms. What do you think could be causing all of this decision paralysis, and how could intuition help at that end?
That's a great question. Usually, when people have this analysis paralysis or decision paralysis, it's because we are at no loss for data and information. And it can be very overwhelming to know that there is so much information that could, or some of us say should, lead
hmm
us to an answer. And yet, in this age where we have all the data that we could ever want and more, we have answers at our fingertips for every, any query you could ever want, you can get the data. The things that we want to do may not have been done before. And so the data that we're looking at, or the perspectives and the points of view that we get from people who are giving us more input and data into our own internal algorithms, they are not necessarily seeing what we see or know the outcome that we want. And so it can feel noisy and it can be unclear, who do you listen to, right? There's an expert for everything, and there's a point of view from everyone, whether or not they're an expert. So in my work, there are a couple of important concepts that I hold to be core operating principles. And
hmm
one is that just the definition of what intuition is very important. And I will be very clear about how I define intuition, which is your intuition is your own internal algorithm that is taking in data and information that, yes, of course, is the analytical data and the perspectives, and it's sensory data, it's environmental data, it's information from your past that your
hmm
body is retaining. So it's a very it's a very embodied system. It's not necessarily our rational, logical
Mm-hmm.
cognition. And this algorithm is taking all of this invisible data and processing it to get an output. And that output is a feeling. And that feeling is only really felt when we have the space and the quiet to be able to sense it. And
Mm-hmm.
so not only does this onslaught of data make it overwhelming to try to logically process all of this decision making, it also drowns out the output that we're getting from our intuition, which I refer to as our inner trusted advisor. It's
Mm-hmm.
constantly pattern sensing to see if things are aligned with your values and where
Mm-hmm.
you want to go in life, and that,
Mm-hmm.
idea that you have that would be wonderful if someday you could do it. Like, that's all part of that process. And once we get quiet, once we can hear it and give ourselves some space, which is very challenging, especially for moms who do so many things in our lives, whether we're home or at work in a third location. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much that's happening. So to quiet the noise, hear your intuition, and then start to learn, how does it speak to you? When it shows up as a feeling, what does that feeling mean?
Mm-hmm.
What's the next right thing to do when you feel a certain way, to really clarify that and get more information from your inner trusted advisor? That's only possible when we can make that space. And so
Mm-hmm.
those are some of the root causes.
Mm-hmm.
And the guidance I give to people who ask, like, well, how can I hear it better? Is to try to make some space to hear it. And that can be walking outside, right? Taking time for yourself to just be outdoors, and nature is a great quieter and allows the inner trusted
Mm-hmm.
advisor to emerge. Meditation and mindfulness
Mm-hmm.
practices, getting good sleep is always helpful, but allowing quiet and space to just, be a little bored, not be listening to something or watching something or feeling like you need to do something. That's when intuition is the loudest.
That's perfect. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. So, I've always been curious. You said that intuition is your inner trusted advisor, and eventually all the information you're getting that goes through that algorithm that comes out as a feeling. But what is the difference between intuition and, let's say, things like wishful thinking or fear or just, I don't know, pressure that you feel? What are all of those things intuition, or is there sort of a very distinct difference? I know you defined intuition. I just want to see
Yeah.
more
So,
specifically. Yeah.
yeah, so there is a difference because and what I will tell you comes from research from Daniel Kahneman, who wrote the book Thinking Fast and Slow, and he's a Nobel Prize winning economist. And in his work, he talks about fast thinking and slow thinking. And the fast thinking is the instinctive
Mm-hmm.
uh, response to a stimulus that we get, right? And so, yes,
Mm-hmm.
that can be seeing something and interpreting an optical illusion, and your brain just does that, right? That's not intuition. That's an illusion. It can be a fear, fight, or flight response. It can be instinct, a knee-jerk reaction, right? It can be emotion or bias about, oh, in the past this has happened and therefore it's going to happen again, and that's
Mm-hmm.
my assumption. So those those are fast thinking, and intuition is fast thinking as well. When you hear a story and you're like, yes or no, I'm aligned or misaligned with that. How do you separate those things is by slowing it down. And so that's where, for me, intuition strategy comes together, which are two things that feel like they feel to be opposites or to be, cognitively confusing, right? To say
Mm-hmm.
intuition and strategy. But the strategy allows us to slow down that fast thinking and say, okay, if this is what I feel to be true and aligned, maybe that's the bias. Like, let's play that out. Where
Mm-hmm.
where is that really leading me? And if I put that into a strategy, if what I want, if what my intuition is telling me, and maybe that is wishful thinking, um,
Mm-hmm.
then what happens when I try to make that a strategic course of action and I prepare for that? And now I say, okay, run that out 2 years from now. What happens? Is that
Mm-hmm.
getting me where I really want to be? And your intuition is guiding you to where you really want to go. Your fear and your bias and your emotion are trying to keep you where you are because that feels
Mm.
safer.
I see. I see. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Thanks for clarifying that. So, my listeners are ambitious and goal-oriented women, and they are really struggling often to take action because they know that something feels misaligned, right? They're also afraid of making the wrong choice. And so, what advice would you give to my listener who might be having trouble moving from overthinking to actually taking action that's aligned?
That's a fantastic question. And you're making me really think about my concept of human AI, which is what I
Okay.
call actionable intuition. So, human AI, when I spoke about that algorithm that we have, our intuition being that algorithm that processes all of this data that exists in our ecosystem, in our past, in our present, your intuition is giving the output that is pattern sensing, dot connecting, seeing what's aligned or misaligned. And what makes human AI distinct from just intuition is the AI is actionable intuition. And so when you feel that there is something that's calling you, people have different language for this, right? You feel called
Hmm.
to something, your gut sense is telling you to do something or not do something. The key is to build trust in that there is an action you can take to test your hypothesis. And so when you feel something, like I'll give a simple example, like if somebody's asking me, okay, are you going to go to this event? And I feel obligated maybe to attend an event, but my sense is like, oh, I really, I feel like I shouldn't. I feel like
Hmm.
maybe there's a different event, or maybe staying home is the right thing, or maybe my kid needs some time with me. So, how do you start to take action, test a hypothesis that, yeah, maybe my intuition is telling me something that I can so what if I didn't go to this event? And
Hmm.
actually, here's a pro tip for listeners
Hmm.
about how to start reframing in a way that makes you able to take action on your intuition is when you hear that inner voice saying, I should do something or I should
Hmm.
not do something, think about what should really represents. And to
Hmm.
me, it feels like a very external
Driven.
valuing of
Hmm.
what the action could be. And so when I think, oh, I should go to that event, maybe it's because my friends will be there and I believe they would like to see me, or they would be
Hmm.
disappointed if I didn't go, or I
Hmm.
should go because, I already paid the entrance fee and that's a sunk cost. Well, instead of the should, what if we said, what if? So,
Hmm.
what if I didn't go to that event?
Hmm.
Well, yeah,
Hmm.
my friends would be upset and maybe they'd be disappointed, but I'm going to have coffee with them next week. And
Hmm.
so, what if I didn't go? Well, then I might be able to read that chapter of my book I was really getting into. Or, there's so many different possibilities that then lead you to the action.
Hmm.
And so, when you're feeling indecisive and you feel that something intuitively is coming up as far as what's the next right step, instead of saying the should, replace that with what if, and your next right action might become more clear.
That's really great. It's almost as if you're saying when you feel indecisive, it's because you've actually trapped yourself into limited options instead of thinking about all the options. And that when you actually open yourself up to all the possibilities, you think it's counterintuitive because you would think, well, I don't want to have more options. I'm indecisive. I need to pick one. But actually, it's like what you said, we were misaligned.
Exactly. And that's going from an either or mindset to a
Hmm.
both and. And that's
Hmm.
actually another core principle of intuition strategy, which is um, we can be intuitive and strategic. It's not
Hmm.
an either or. And
Right.
so I believe that life is really both and.
Hmm.
The question is how to find that third path and take another option that might not have even existed, but that's
Hmm.
where the gold is, and that's
Yeah.
where your true aligned success might really be found.
So that is literally the basis of my business is really that we are trapping ourselves in that either or that you have to, as a woman, choose success or family life. And I am through life planning, which empowers you to move into that both and uh, situation. And so My last question that I always ask every guest, I feel like you might have just answered it, but feel free to more directly or expand on. And that is, what does a balanced life mean to you?
Mm, I love this question. Um, to me, balance is not real. Balancing as a verb is. And so going back to engineering principles, like
Mhm,
for true balance, that means the environment is static and
mhm,
unchanging. And that's not our reality. We live in a very dynamic world, society. Every day is different. And therefore, the aspiration of life, I believe, is to continue to be dynamic and adjust and adaptive and resilient to change so that as more things, as more variables get introduced and new uncertainties are emerging,
mhm.
we can adjust and we can do what is right now. We can take the next right step and then see what that does to our system and then learn, did that get better or not?
Yeah.
and and then continue to adapt and grow because balance is fleeting. And as soon as one more thing gets put on one side of the scale, it's going to be off. And that's just what life is. So
Mhm.
I think it's really about being dynamic and being open to change and adjustment and seeing things from different perspectives and experimenting with new strategies and techniques. And then that's what makes life interesting and spicy and and you get to do more, fun things like start a podcast and,
Exactly,
live a life
exactly.
that's really fulfilling and cool.
That's so funny. You started off when you were talking about it, it sounded very systems thinking, like the engineer side of you came out, I feel like. And I love how you ended it with this philosophical sort of impression on all of us. So I really appreciate all of the time that you have given me here. You've been very generous. I know we've had a very long conversation, but it's just so, I just want to learn more and more about what you do. So I'm sure that my listeners are going to feel that way as well. Can you tell us where we can find you? Tell us about, more of your resources and anything else you want to share about your work.
Absolutely. Thank you. So you can find me on the internet. My homepage is intuitionstrategist.com. That's where you can go for information about my work, about corporate tarot cards, about my podcast, The Intuition Strategist, my Substack, like all sorts of resources there. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where I spend most of my time on social media. And I am Leah Goldman, no middle initial on LinkedIn. And I do have a resource that I'm sharing that you can find. So you can download the View Framework workbook that I had mentioned earlier at pages.intuitionstrategist.com/ambitious. And so that's a free guide that you can use. I encourage you print it out, write longhand. It's great for your intuition, and get a new view on a decision that you're making. And I think if you combine that with your life plan, it might give you some really juicy input for the life planning process. So I'm curious, I can definitely see a future where we collaborate on some interesting tools and new data collection to have your ambitious mom life.
That's awesome. Great. So I will absolutely share all of your links and resources as well in the episode description. So make sure to check that out as well. And it was wonderful having you on. Thank you so much for being here.
You're so welcome. And I'm excited to continue our conversation over on the Intuition Strategist podcast.
Yes, I'm very excited about that. Thank you so much. Bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
I hope today's episode will help you create time and freedom to pursue something you love to do. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and tell other purpose-driven mamas about it. Who knows? You might even make a new friend by sharing a tip. It's all free. By the way, it would be amazing to hear what you think about the show when you leave a review on Apple Podcasts. After all, my passion is to make this a great experience for you. I'll see you next week for another episode of Achieve Your Ambitious Mom Life with Anoki Kapasi.